Well, good afternoon. This is Lehigh County Board of Directors meeting on September 22nd, 2025. The meeting being held in the hybrid fashion, either live in person or via Zoom or the phone call. Lisa, would you please the roll call of the board of directors?
You bet. Roll call of the board. Amir Famili.
Here.
Jeff Morgan.
Here.
Ted Lyons. Linda Rosenfeld. Evan Baker. Sean Ziller.
Here.
Peter Dent.
Here.
We have 4 board members present, so we do have a quorum.
Great, thank you. The package for this meeting was sent either in the mail, via email, and I've also posted on the website. If you have issue receiving those packages, please see Lisa in regard to that. Going to review the agenda. Lisa, any changes to the agenda or any need for the executive session?
No changes to the agenda. There was a revision midweek last week, but that's been posted to our website. Other than that, no changes and no executive sessions today.
Thank you, appreciate that. Going to approval of the last meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay.
And I'll second, Sean.
Good, thank you. The motion made by Jeff, second by Sean. All in favor, say aye.
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 None, okay. Moving on, is there any public comment on the items which is not on the agenda?
No, thank you, Amir.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you, Brian. Thank you for joining us. So going to, did I miss the committee report? There's none, so there's nothing there. So going to the finance and administration, LCA pension plan, a mandatory municipal obligation is a digital board package, pages 9, 10.
This is information only, something that we're required to provide every year in September. And if you have any comments on what's shown here for the board? Has your name on it.
Okay, yep, no, I remember seeing it. So this is typically what we have to provide to PMRS on an annual basis that reflects what we're gonna collect from the employees, what is the 1% factor. It also includes a small bridge, actually, it's a large bridge, between whatever funded and what they think we need to do to fund it, which is a good thing. So this is pretty much the standard calculation. PMRS provides us with a number of figures and calculations. So that's where we are.
Real quick, Kevin Baker jumped on at 12:03.
Thank you.
Any question regarding that topic? None? Okay. Moving to next topic under finance administration is the 2026 budget. A presentation, I assume? Or?
Yes, we do have another presentation. This one will be less focused on people and more focused on numbers.
Okay.
So we spent a lot of time over the last 2 meetings talking about people and staffing requirements to make sure we can implement the programs that we have in front of us. We also have, did we distribute the printed copies of the preliminary statements for the budget? Those are in every board member's email inbox and in paper copy here today. Will be mailed out to you if you are not here in person today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get into the presentation. As I mentioned, the last couple of meetings, we've been spending quite a bit of time talking about staffing requirements. So I am going to not spend time on that today. Just give a quick overview of some of the major budget assumptions. So Today, sort of a repeat of where we were last time. Today, we're going to summarize the budget assumptions and then start to dig into the fund financials and what we expect this year's or next year's budgets will look like in terms of overall results. Then at the next meeting in early October, we'll dig into rates and the rate impact of the 2026 budget proposal. And then we'll ask for budget approval at the end of October. And then we adopt rates in November. So this slide is what I showed last time in terms of 2025 priorities that we budgeted for and where we're achieving some of those completion dates already. And then some of the ongoing programs like the lead program, employee safety, asset management, and some new priorities. We talked about these in some detail last time: regional leadership, technology and data management, facilities and security and affordability. And then to Amir's point about some additional priorities from the board, we do have some project performance metrics that we'll be presenting before the end of the year. AJ and his team are working on those. So we hope to have some good board dialogue on those by the end of the year. This year. The strategic priorities are focused on our vision statement, which is to be a trusted and engaged community partner and really ensuring that the services we provide are advancing our region's goals for economic and public health goals. So with that, I'll just give a summary of some of the budget impacts of those strategic initiatives. We do have, first, excluding the personnel, we have a few items: special studies and legal fees, increased communications activities and outreach activities, some dedicated funding for affordability and rate evaluations. And then within our capital budget, we've got a few items related to the technology master plan, facilities improvements, and of course, our lead replacement program, which is the big one that we've been working on. A couple points I wanted to highlight on how we manage these personnel changes. Certainly, we did take a focus this year on eliminating or repurposing vacant positions that we felt we could do that to make room for some new positions. We also have some phased hiring. So we want to prioritize lead program staffing because that's a must-do item. It's required that we have this program. So we'll focus there first and then kind of fill in from there with some of the other positions. We talked quite a bit over the last couple meetings about how we track overtime, how we justify internal staffing versus outsourcing. So developing some mechanisms to better track those items. Really important for us. Okay, so the next couple of slides are repeats from the last presentation, just a summary, and I've shaded or highlighted the item that has changed since the last presentation. Not a whole lot. We have the 14 new positions that we've included in the budget in all of these various programs, including technology, facilities, our affordability program, our lead program, and our I&I program. The change here is that this business and rate analyst position we talked about last time was slated to be a brand new position, and we have determined since that time that we have a current position called collections analyst that's been vacant for quite some time. And so we can actually reduce the headcount by swapping them. And that helps a little bit. That's the only real major change. Again, looking at current vacancies, these are from the 2025 budget vacancies that we have. We had this collections analyst position in the bottom here as being open that we would fill next year. And we've put it up to the top here as a position we will eliminate but replace it. So we get that down by one. And that's what that looks like, kind of all put together. We have 179 active employees and 12 open positions. So our 2025 budget is for 191, but we're eliminating 4. So it was 3, but now it's 4, and then adding the 14. So our 2026 budget includes 201 positions, and that's a net change of 10. Unfortunately, because the collections analyst position was vacant and on hold, it's a headcount change, and in number only. It doesn't actually affect the budget because we didn't include the salary for that position in our budgeting forecast. So the numbers here haven't changed from the last presentation. With adding those 14 positions and the phasing of those positions, we would expect to see a total cost increase for personnel of 7.7%.
So just a quick question. So 10 people, $700,000. That's become about 70,000 for the cost of the person. Am I missing something?
Yeah, the big issue is the phasing of the position. So if we look back at this one, we see some of them coming in later in the year.
So you're phasing, so that number is phased in. So it's the timing, one is second quarter, third quarter. So that's the reason the number is there. Okay.
Mhm. Okay. So overall budget assumptions for 2026, the personnel cost increase of 7.7%, 450,000 for additional studies and other support for strategic initiatives. And then everything else is kind of standard stuff. We have an inflationary impact of a little under 3%. We've got rates coming at the next meeting, but the city division and sewer signatory rates are by agreement, by formula. We are expecting to calculate new rates for our suburban wastewater collector systems. We're estimating 5%, and we'll dig into more detail at the next meeting. And then suburban water, we're saying revenue growth of 4% because there's an element of growth there that happens as well. It offsets the rate increase. So that's it for the budget assumptions, a quick summary of our last meeting. And now turn it over to Ed to dig into the numbers.
Okay, suburban water, operating expenses, we will be up 7.5% to forecast. There is an inflation impact, which we will get into in some tables that are following. Impact from some of the strategic initiatives on the labor side is 65,000. And then they will also, this fund will also give its proportional share based on historical allocation rates. Capital budget is 6.3. We are going to take all of that 6.3 from current rates and reserves. So not borrowing and not incurring any new debt service. Revenue, as Lisa mentioned, we're looking at a 4% increase with 1% of that volume and 3% estimated rate impact. And if we remember, that would be where we were when we did the capital plan as well. So on the metric side, targeting, we're going to be negative in cash of 1.7 because we're using some reserves without borrowing. However, the key metrics for debt service coverage ratio and cash on hand are still good. This is what the numbers look like. In terms of cash flow, we're going to have a minus $1.750 thousand worth of cash loss. You can see the revenues of $20.8 million, reflecting that 4% increase. The operating expenses with this 7.5% increase altogether, kind of holding the line on non-operating revenue is difficult to get at, so staying conservative. So we should have $7.9 million worth of cash available for debt service with a debt service of 3.3, meaning that we're actually capturing $4.5 million worth of capital in that. However, the capital is going to be $6.3 million. I'm looking at the key metrics. Operating ratio 1.16, so better than 1 is good. Debt service coverage ratio, 2.36 against the 1.2. Capital coverage ratio, try to be above 0.5 at least. One is optimal, we're not there, but unrestricted days cash on hand, still above 180 at 196.5. And we will still have $2.8 million worth of investment balances that are unrestricted on the books, just in case there's a rainy day. So this is how I look at the operating expenses. I try to compare it to both budget, or actually to forecast and then budget, to see if there's any significant differences. In terms of our comparison against forecasts, I break it up into the inflationary effect, which was an inflation rate of 2.7. So theoretically, that leaves you with a volume effect about $812,000. Where big chunks of that are coming is from depreciation and amortization. So you're really down to $300,000 worth of variance on the discretionary spending side, with most of that coming in on the personnel side due to all the changes in personnel, number of people, and some of the benefit rates. So that's a 4.8% increase. Against budget, actually the biggest difference is a bigger than budgeted depreciation amount, which is really pulling that number up to 10.2%. So all in all, just with the headcount changes, taking the discretionary spending, we're really up maybe in the neighborhood of 2.5%. I think it was, if you look at the dollars, like $641,000.
Just miscellaneous services,
Pardon?
miscellaneous services, 1 point all the way on the operating expenses.
I'm not sure I got your question.
In the operating expenses,
Yep,
miscellaneous services,
yes.
$1 million negative, right?
That would be $103,000 negative.
Okay.
Yeah, you're only up by 1.9% on the services side compared to forecast. The biggest change is on the depreciation side in both cases comparison.
It's a depreciation, okay, yes, thank you.
This is a workup on how we get to the 4.0%. And you start with the operating expenses. You basically take out a need for DNA because that's a non-cash. You got to cover debt service at 3.3 million. We projected the use of reserves of 1.8. Believe it or not, that's the exact amount of the fund cash flow. And take away the system and interconnection charges that you don't need because you are capturing outside of rates. And altogether, we need $19.4 million worth of user charges, and prior forecast was 18.6, and that the difference of 746 comes out to be 4%. This is the capital side, and I'm pretty sure that this ties out to all of what we went over in terms of the capital plan. Again, just a quick summary, 2.5 million in annual. The rest of the projects total up to be 6.035, and the bigger one on there is the water meter replacement program. So this is what it looks like in terms of trends over the years, in terms of all of the costs, including capital that we call in here. And you can see that revenues were a little bit better since 2022 to this year, basically, when we're showing the first loss that we've budgeted in a while. Again, you showing a negative cash flow only because I don't want to borrow and our cash days on hand is good. So So we're leveraging some of the days cash on hand that we've been accumulating. Suburban wastewater. Operating expenses, 7.2% to forecast, same 2.7% inflation impact. Strategic initiatives, close to what water was, 66. Capital budget, 6.9 million. Funding from current rates and reserves. I'm not doing any new borrowing and no new debt service, and you'll see what that does on the next table. But the revenue side, signatory rates under review. It's difficult to build any volume increases into this. The signatory rates will be impacted by capital expenses and pass-throughs. Collector systems rate increase of 5%. That's the first in a bit.
2013.
Metrics. We are targeting it, and we are going to report a $4.3 million negative cash flow. And the metrics will be lower than where we want it to be. So we'll get into the table. So we're showing a loss, cash deficit of $4.3 million. There's the $22.7 million worth of revenue and operating expenses that we can see in the next table as well. So we're going to have $4.7 million worth of money available to pay off debt service. After that, we'll have 2.5 left, and against the capital spending of $6.8 million, we're going to show a deficit of 4.3. The operating ratio is once again below 1. We kind of budgeted that way this year. Debt service coverage ratio is good, so that's a number that we're holding to. Capital coverage ratio is dropping. Unrestricted days cash on hand is, well, almost 51 days, and we really want it to be 180, but we're holding off on the borrowing. This is a very conservative approach without creating issues with trying to borrow without specific revenue streams in front of us.
So if I could maybe add to that, one of the things we're talking about, and we'll talk about actually in our next discussion item, is about the future of the pretreatment plant. We're also talking about here the collector system rate increases. Both of those sets of customers are currently the future revenues still need to be worked out. We don't know what the relationships for the industries will be, especially for pretreatment. And so without having that revenue picture fully fleshed out, we kind of took this approach where we're going to show what it looks like without borrowing, because we don't have the revenue figured out that would justify the borrowing. So this is like worst case, right, Ed? We have no new revenue and no new borrowing.
That CapEx that you have, majority is for pretreatment or what?
No, we can get into that if you
Okay.
want. Yeah, we'll see that. It's just that one, I'm really asking for everybody to pause and say, this is a very conservative approach, and I think it addresses the questions and concerns that you all had on the board, that it's like, we're going to borrow and we don't have really anybody designated to pay for it. So this is avoiding that. In terms of expenses, altogether on the operating expense side versus forecast, we are going to show a $1.7 million variance. That's really broken up into $500-some-thousand worth of inflation effect on 2.7 and $1.2 million on the volume side. Most of that is on the treatment and transportation volume side. The rest of the numbers are really, once you strip out the headcount changes that we talked about, are really not bad in terms of materials and supplies and services. Altogether, we're off 5%, but you can see the big hitter there is treatment and transportation.
Could you explain on what is included in the treatment and transportation?
Treatment and transportation is all of the costs associated with the flow of product to Klein's Island. Divvied up.
Okay,
And that's more a volume number really than a cost expenditure number.
so the chemicals are not included in treatment and transportation, are they? The cost of chemicals, for example?
No,
Oh, yes, they are.
Good.
Sure. It's basically, that's the pass through from the city to
okay,
suburban.
no, I get what you're asking.
Okay, I got it.
I'm a little slow on the draw today.
Okay.
So this is what the capital looks like. Again, this is a mirror image of the capital plan that we went over. You can see the annual projects of 962.5. 3.4 is the number that you were looking for in terms of pre-treatment plant activity, and that's just the normal improvements of 600,000, the critical upgrades of 2.5, and pre-treatment upgrades and replacement of 300,000. So to get to $3.4 million. The rest of it is Western Lehigh Interceptor Group, and then the satellite systems of almost $1 million. This is a graph that shows exactly what we've seen in the last couple of years. We've kind of run on the negative side since 2023 with respect to revenues and then total spending, including capital expense, and we've experienced that trend again in 2026. Oh, city, okay. Well, city looks good. 6.3% increase compared to 2025 forecast. There's an inflation impact of 2.7, strategic initiatives based on the headcount, 132,000. In terms of capital budget, we're gonna spend $50.4 million. We had 2025 borrowing will be 2026 borrowing, because so we just went out and launched our bond consent effort. We expect to be able to do business with Penvest, I believe, in early January or late January. So I have that date wrong. It really should be 2026. We'll borrow the 5.7 based on the latest funding agreement that they held open. The other 6.6 is coming from grants related mostly to the lead service line replacement program, and then 38.1 million coming from current rates and reserves. In terms of revenues, lease rates go up by 5.5%. Additional capital charges yet are to be finalized, and signatory revenues will be impacted by capital expenses. Now, even though cash flow is negative, it's because we're using up some previous borrowings to handle it, plus the 5.7 that we're getting. The metrics on the city side look good. So in terms of cash flow, we're at almost $16 million loss. You can see with the 5.5% increase, we're at 67.4 million against operating expenses and non-operating revenues of $8 million. We should end up with $46.8 million worth of cash available for debt service against the debt service of $18.1 million.
Can I ask you a question on that slide? So 2024 spent about 19 million on capital projects. And then 2025 is budgeted for 50.5. Are we actually going to hit 50.5? I know we talk about this every budget season. It was Brian's favorite topic of, the CapEx and are we actually going to spend all that money?
So you're comparing it to 2024?
Yes,
Okay, so yeah, you're right, it was $19 million. We,
right,
to my knowledge, right now, we're, on target to spend maybe a little bit less on the city side minus the $15 million. Because the lead service line replacement project is really now being deferred until 2026.
okay,
So 50.6 is not gonna be 50, it's gonna be 30 some.
okay.
So I don't know if I'm answering your question.
So you're confident that the 50 million for 2026 is an achievable number? This was what I'm asking.
Yeah. Yeah, especially knowing that we're carrying some into the year.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah,
On the operating side, we'll have an operating ratio of 1.74, debt service coverage ratio 2.19, all of that's good. Unrestricted days cash on hand, we're 366 almost, so I mean, the metrics look good. And I think it's good that we launched on bond consent and we can actually move forward with Penvest activity as we go on in this fund. Spending, compared to forecast, we're up about $2.3 million. Inflation is $1.1 million. Spending volume is 1.2. That's 3.4%, which is actually a decrease. Yeah, sorry, 3.4% increase compared to forecast. And even as you look at comparisons against budget, we're kind of within the same range of 3.6. So not a whole lot there. Cap plan annual projects 2.7. Non-CCRC 1.2, CCRC 24 million, total of 28. That's on water only. Wastewater side, annual 2.1. You got non-CCRC worth 1.7. CCRC worth 17.9. So a total of $21.9 million on the wastewater side. Again, reflective of the fact that we have, yeah, this one looks a little bit weird. Because the revenue stream is higher than the expenses, so something not right here. Revenues are exceeding expenses on the city side, so that's impossible for me. Unless, okay, and I know what's happening is that you carry forward a previously borrowed money, so. Yeah, I'm sitting here going, what the heck is wrong with this? But I don't know why, because we borrowed. And so we're spending that money in 2025 and 26. That makes more sense. So on a summary basis, just looking at net income, will be positive in total. That's a combination of a positive number in suburban water, 2.6 million loss on wastewater, and net income on the city will be 15.5. Cash flows, again, we're negative in water. We choose to be wastewater. We already talked about that. In the 15.9, almost 60 million on the city is just using up already borrowed money. Debt service coverage ratios are all above 2. That's good. And we talked about that capital spending, and that in total is about $63.5 million total capital spending.
This was our, probably our most intensive review of numbers. At our next meeting, we spend time on any refinements to those numbers that we'll be continuing to work on over the next couple of weeks. Also, at the next meeting, spending some time on rates. So we understand there's a lot of increases, there's a lot of changes in our budgeting from last year to 2026. So we want to be sure we're clear on the rate impact to our customers. And then it's not shown here, but also at the next meeting, we'll be looking, revisiting the capital plan. And any public comments that we have, we'll share those and ask for approval of that as well. And then we get into approval of the budget and rate adoption in November. We like to do the rates as early as we can so that we can do some notice to our townships and industrial. For budget today.
Any question from the board members?
Lots of numbers.
Some numbers, yes. And a smaller number on the handout, yeah.
What's that?
Smaller number on the handout to read.
Well, we're gonna fix that. Yes, I've been told that you guys are all having such a fun time trying to see the
Yes.
little net
I'll plug the
numbers.
magnifying glass.
I have a question if I could here. Could you define CCRC? I should have asked during that slide, but what does CCRC stand for?
That stands for capital cost recovery charge, and it's a specific type of rate that is defined in our lease agreement with Allentown. So essentially, specific projects are reviewed by the city and approved by the city to be captured through this particular rate mechanism called a capital cost recovery charge.
Thank you.
Any other question? Hearing none.
I got a quick question.
Go ahead, Kevin.
When you go through the budget, Ed, and you make the choices to use from reserves or new borrowing, that kind of thing, I'm just interested in what kind of decision process we go through when we make those choices. Obviously, there's to borrow or not to borrow, but then how do you decide how much to take out of reserves, how much to not?
So generally speaking, you've heard me mention about 180 days being an internal target. And in fact, maybe I'm going back a couple of weeks even ago where Ted asked similar question. If I'm looking at a fund that has 300 days cash on hand, you have to ask the question, do you want to borrow to fund capital, especially in a situation where that's going to exceed for the year? And put you in a deficit, or do you, or not, I'm sorry, you borrow to not put yourself in a deficit? Or do you want to leverage some of that money that you've accumulated over a period of time to get the 300 days cash on hand and take it back down to your internal target? So that's kind of where I go. I want to stop at 180. Now you would quickly say, yeah, but you didn't do that suburban wastewater this time around. And there is a reason for that, like we talked about the revenue streams. But generally, I would stop at 180 and say that's enough cash in reserves. And on top of that, if you look at suburban water, and even on the suburban wastewater side, there's a healthy amount of money sitting in invested balances that does not get included in that 180-day calculation. So that's also out there in case we need to manage to that as well. So that's kind of how I look at it. Hopefully I'm answering your question, but it's really, can I get to 180 without causing harm to the fund?
Yeah, that's great. I just want to get some insight into the rationale.
Yeah, it's really not all that complicated for me. It's just if I'm sitting there with a lot of cash in reserves, maybe it's time to use some of that instead of going out and borrowing.
Yeah, that at least that's mission appropriate for the authorities. So that's really the question.
Any other question? Okay, hearing none. Good, on the wastewater suburban division, industrial pretreatment plan, the master plan discussion.
Yeah, so this is part two of the discussion we started, I think 2 meetings ago. 2 meetings ago, I gave a presentation that focused on the legal and financial challenges associated with pretreatment. And today we're super excited to have Jim McQuarrie from AECom and AJ to present some of the engineering background and solutions that they've been working on. So AJ, you want to lead in?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Liesl. So, yeah, basically over the last 4 to 5 months, we've been working on a new solution for the pretreatment plant with the assumption that KDP, Keurig Dr. Pepper, Coke, Synopta would be part of the solution. We've received word from BBC and Ocean Spray that they've opted out of being in the future plant. So this is a look at what things would be like if with those industries in and those industries out. So AECom did the study, so we asked Jim to basically provide a presentation of what we looked at and what we're recommending going forward. So, Jim?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks, AJ. Yeah, so as AJ said, we spent the summer looking at kind of a technical and financial evaluation of the pretreatment plant, and basically what would be required to provide another life cycle worth of service from the pretreatment plant, which we're calling PTP 2.0. So it's interesting to kind of look at this plant, and if you can see the box in the middle, it says pretreatment plant. It's got a little red bar boundary on the site. So that's the pretreatment plant. And this is what the service area looks like today. This treatment plant serves the population equivalent in terms of loading of 380,000 pounds per day. So even though this plant's small, it does a lot of work. And just for reference, in terms of what this plant has contributed to economic development in the area, the next photo shows what this site looked like back in 1992. So you can appreciate the role this pretreatment plant played in economic development and wastewater services in this area. So since 1992, the plant is getting up there in age. It's taken on a lot of wear and tear from this service. And that's what a pretreatment plant 2.0 is about. It's about, should it make good sense? What would another life cycle's worth of service look like in terms of refurbishments, cost, and scheduling? So kind of recognizing that the plant is definitely reaching the end of its first generation of useful life. You know, concrete lasts a long time. Rotating equipment, process mechanical equipment, typically is good for about 20 years. That's kind of the rule of thumb in our industry. Some of this equipment is 30 years plus, 35 years plus. So some of the most critical needs of that facility were identified, and projects were developed to address those critical process renovations that were needed to basically bridge reliable service to a point in time we're calling 2032. That's kind of a milestone for thinking about getting to that point to where there would be significant refurbishment into this pretreatment plant 2.0. And by the way, there's any questions? Probably good to just, yeah. It's really important to point out that this work that was done here at the summer of 2025 is really evaluated about half a dozen other prior work efforts, master planning work and other targeted work efforts. In a lot of ways, it's kind of serves as a compendium or a synthesis of some of the key findings from that work. Okay, so these slides are, and just remember, there's alternatives have been evaluated. These slides really focus on the recommended path forward. Okay, so it's probably important to kind of follow this graph along. The circles on the top are the connectors or dischargers to the pretreatment plant. So so on the right is UMT East, Synopta, Coke, and KDP. And over on the left is the west and middle leg of the UMT collection system. And to be clear, I think BBC and Ocean Spray both discharge to the middle or the west leg? West leg, okay. So what we created for this evaluation was what we call the scenario A, which is what AJ said. This is basically kind of looking at what's convenient or feasible to reroute around the pretreatment plant and what's convenient or feasible to continue flowing to the pretreatment plant. So on the right is what is convenient to keep going to the pretreatment plant, which is UMT East and those three industrial discharges. And on the other side, the middle leg and west leg, the evaluation showed that it's relatively convenient to reroute and bypass those flows and loads around the pretreatment plant. So that's kind of the flows and loads scenario that we carried forward in our evaluation. So based on those flows and loads, we went rather rigorously through the pretreatment plant and looked at what would be required at each of those unit process areas. And you can see these little numbers there. There's 7 numbers on the upper right-hand corner, but they basically identify those buildings or those processes or those areas that would require attention and refurbishment to, again, get that another life cycle's worth of service out of this facility. So we can go into some details, but generally speaking, the big ticket items are, this is looking at retiring the high purity oxygen system, which is it's a significant asset. It's expensive to operate, it's expensive to maintain, and it's a high capital cost item. So one of the big things about pretreatment plant 2.0 is taking advantage of BBC and UMT, the middle and west legs, and the fact that all those loads are being rerouted, and then fundamentally simplifying this facility, taking advantage of that to simplify this facility. The other key point would be this also continues to retain and even correct some of the current deficiencies with regard to hauled waste receiving, be able to receive hauled waste efficiently and economically. There was one other scenario that was considered, and that was, what would it be like? Would there be advantages to also rerouting Synopta and UMT East around the pretreatment plant? And then by doing so, there would be the unfortunate consequence of not really being able to equalize wet weather flow in that area. So when wet weather occurs, the flows sometimes exceed the capacity of some of the transmission lines out there. That's one of the features that's currently available, is that there's about 1 million gallons of storage there that can be used to store wastewater offline to help that out. Okay, this is a lot of information here. So this is the loadings at Kex Bridge. And what these two graphs show is the one on the left is probably the one worth paying attention to, but it's basically showing how those two scenarios impact the concentration of BOD and the loadings at that location. The far left blue bar is showing the current loading, and the next bar over to the right shows how that load would increase if the middle and west legs of the UMT, and provided that BBC provides pretreatment as well as ocean spray, how those loads would increase at that location. The next bar to the right shows that if we were to go with that second scenario of also rerouting UMT East and Synopta, that the loads would then basically reach the quantitative criteria in that Kex Bridge agreement. Yep.
Just interrupt just for a second.
Totally. Yep.
For the board members who may not be familiar with our system, Kex Bridge is a location where the LCA Western Lehigh system essentially is measured as the total flow and loading going to Allentown. So it includes pretreatment as well as all other waste that come into the Western Lehigh.
So one of the advantages that we'll talk about with scenario A is it leaves, as you can see, it leaves some buffer there. There's some room to go up. which allows for growth in other areas within that collection system or that service area. Whereas scenario B really says, fully leverages that agreement allowance. So that's a really quick run through of the refurbishments that have been identified. This is kind of walking through a sequencing timeline and of how that may unfold over the next 15 years in terms of, one, just doing the right things at the right time for the right price. It's a way of just spreading things out in terms of cost and schedule and timing. So this could play out that BBC pretreatment commissioned is expected to occur sometime around the end of 2027, AJ?
Yep, that's right.
So in around that period of time, the first recommended set of improvements would occur, and that would be to have proper hauled waste receiving station improvements at that site. That would be about $4.82 million. That would allow for hauled waste to be received, screened, and properly treated in the most cost-efficient manner available. Along with that would be the conveyance work to allow for UMT West and the middle interceptors to be rerouted around the pretreatment plant. There would be a second series of events. Second set of investments in those green boxes would be solids handling system improvements for about 14 million, and electrical package number 1 improvements for about 7.8 million. So both of those projects include electrical refurbishments that are kind of considered to be critical, really important improvements to the site, just given their condition, given the need to run for another 7 years of reliable service. So around that time, BBC would go through a performance proving period to demonstrate that they can, in fact, reliably treat down the 250 milligrams per liter BOD and TSS, and that organic load reduction is occurring reliably. That's just indicating there that critical improvements. So the next thing that would happen is everybody's good. BBC which currently produces a very large organic load. So it's very important that when pretreatment moves to on-site, that they continue on day in, day out basis, knock down that load before it's discharged to the sewer. Once that proving period is complete, the UMT West and Middle bypasses would be activated, and those treated effluents would come down and ponds out. And once that occurs, the LCA, the pretreatment plant can begin to simplify. The high purity oxygen reactor or the process, which is complicated, expensive, all those other things can be mothballed or retired. And at that time, there would be an investment in the aeration basins to make that conversion happen. There's savings on the O&M side once that occurs. So for the aeration basins would be converted, and then there would be a second electrical package to deal with critical needs from electrical improvements perspective, but those items that could wait until 2032 before they're addressed. And after that milestone, after that pre-2032 milestone where PTP 2.0 is now in effect, there's 3 other packages of work that are probably worth planning for, but reviewing at that time whether or not they're necessary or if they could be pushed down in time. But you can see those to the right: influent pump station and headworks improvements, some improvements to the primary treatment tanks, and some improvements to the Raswas pump station. And all of that in combined kind of lays out what improvements are needed for a pretreatment plant 2.0 and what the costs are. I think there's a summary cost table, but then how over time those costs can be laid out in a way that's strategic in terms of spending only what you need to at the right time. Yeah, so this graph here shows kind of that first investment in 2027, second investment in 2028, and then that third investment in 2032, which basically gets you to a pre-treatment plant 2.0, which is sufficiently refurbished to provide another 20 years of service. And then after that, you have those projects that are outlined that are less critical, good to plan for, but could be deferred or reduced in the future. Okay. So scenario A, all the items on the left are just, packages the way we looked at this plant and broke it down into improvement packages. But in sum, the total improvements cost for scenario A is estimated to be around 48 million. It's important to note that this is class 4 cost estimating. What that means is that there's many more details that could be fleshed out in the future that could bring that cost down or bring that cost up. So on the low end, it could come down to about 33 million or as high as 72 million. Considering that scenario A has no new concrete work, has a pretty robust evaluation of electrical improvements that was conducted, it's likely that the price would probably be more on the lower end of that range than go in the opposite direction. And for reference, you can see that scenario B, interestingly, doesn't really save anything in terms of capital improvements cost. It's slightly higher in fact. So switching gears, and AJ and Liesl, please chime in if we miss anything on this one. But there was a lot of work, a lot of studies have been done on the hog waste program. Those were referenced. It's a revenue opportunity for LCA. So one of the studies that was done really looked into this hog waste program. Basically said, how does it compare to other hog waste programs? Is there room to generate more revenue? The answer is yes. LCA, there's when you compare rates to other hog waste receiving programs, there's rate. Trying to think of a word for this. There's room to increase the rates and still remain competitive with the alternatives that are out there for hog waste receiving. So that's the top one. On the second one, with all those changes in terms of loading to this plant, the facilities that have already been built, there's plenty of room to increase the hog waste program as well. So the bottom line is there's probably enough room to increase the hog waste program by 25% in terms of other potential hog waste receiving or revenue streams. So there's a lot of room to grow that program. So summary of recommendations. From looking at all the different flow and load scenarios, what makes sense? Like what's cost effective? What's operationally effective? What's that sweet spot? It's option A, basically taking UMT East, Synopta, Coke, and KDP at the pre-treatment plant. The most cost-effective approach is to basically take what you have and refurbish it. Refurbish those concrete facilities, retire cryo, and really kind of lean into the waste hauling receiving program and have a proper waste hauler receiving station to make that just increase the ease of operation and the efficiency at which those loads can be taken in and treated. The total cost for the entire facility is about 48 million. The idea would be that BBC's solids residuals would continue to come to this plant. And then there's a schedule summary that we went through in terms of sequencing of work. Benefits of this recommended approach are this facility reserves, or this improvement, scenario A, reserves some buffer or some capacity at Kex Bridge for growth in the other parts of the service area. In addition, the pre-treatment plant 2.0 on-site has capacity for another 2 aeration basins. So that basically says you could take on another Coke or another KDP per tank, or another 2 UMT Easts. So to put that into reference, it allows for additional growth in that locale. Synopta has a uniquely challenging waste stream. There's a lot of fats, oils, and greases and things in that waste that could be real issues in a Weston Lehigh interceptor. So one of the advantages here is that Synopta continues to go through pretreatment, which offers a backstop against those materials being discharged to Western Lehigh interceptor. It keeps the flow equalization basin available to help attenuate wet weather flows coming east. And like I said, the hauled waste discharge and digester really frees up a lot of capacity in the liquid stream process and makes hauled waste receiving much more effective even than it currently is. Any questions? AJ, you want to go over these?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so there's a number of things that we're still working on. Right now, we have Raftelis helping us with like an apportionment analysis as far as what the industries would each be responsible for, what UMT would be responsible for. That's almost done. They're working on that and should have it this week. Looking at the financing capacity of the haul waste program, how much revenue can we get from that? How much revenue can we get if we increase the tipping fees, and kind of looking at how that would play out in the future. And then a big question is getting agreement from the industries and Upper Township to be part of this program. Like looking at the numbers, are they willing to buy into what we're offering? So there's the capital side, and there's also the operating costs. So that's all work that AECOM has helped us develop as far as those costs, and then Raftelis is reviewing those, coming up with the apportionment by industry. We've also engaged another cost estimating firm, NASCO, to review what AECOM has put together, because the numbers are so important. We don't want to be too high and scare industries away unnecessarily. We don't want to be too low and have to come back later and say we made a mistake. So we're scrutinizing on the cost to make sure that we've got numbers that are defensible and supportable. So yeah, then just kind of getting formal agreements with the industries. Right now, we only have an agreement with BBC. We'd have to have separate agreements with Synopta, Coke, and KDP for all of this. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but we're happy that we have a starting point for the discussions, which are the costs. So that's our update for you. Happy to answer any questions. Thanks again to Jim for your work and your team's work on this.
Any question?
Just one, I think last meeting I asked about Ocean Spray and Boston Beer and getting them out of the pre-treatment plant, that obviously there's interceptor work to be done. Is that interceptor work specific to them? And if so, could we have some type of cost recovery for that? Was it 600,000? Was that just for the,
Yeah,
that's because they're getting out of the pre-treatment plant, they're gonna do their own pre-treatment, and we're gonna build an interceptor to accommodate them. So, I don't know if that's been considered or not, or should be.
I think it's all up for grabs in terms of negotiations. We are gonna ask them to contribute for some of the solids handling, because they're gonna send us solids. I don't know on this interconnect.
Yeah, I think recognizing that they're not dedicated interceptors, so the UMT West line does carry Boston Beer and Ocean Spray, but it also carries a lot of Upper Macungie
Oh,
Township.
that's what I was asking.
As
Okay,
well,
okay.
yeah. So they're investing quite a bit to remove their flows from the plant. So it's a discussion point, but not a guarantee.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was simply because of the two, but if there's other ancillary flows in there. Okay, got it.
Any other question? So far, how much money we have spent in the last year for pretreatment?
Yeah, I've got those numbers here. So, to date, we spent, in construction costs about 5 million, on the HBO improvements and on the clarifier upgrades.
On the cryo upgrade? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, for the, updating the, cryogenic system.
Cryogenic.
with the oxygen.
I mean, it's a lot of unknown, right? What would be the cost? I'm gonna ask this question. Just have this thing run for 2 years, and after 2 years, they said, we are out of here. Because we have to have that scenario, because if these guys come and say, you know what, I'm not ready for that. And second is, you know, I might not be here in 2032, you know, I don't know what the business is gonna look like.
Yeah.
At end of the day, you know, it has to be a self-sustaining business. I mean, I'm using the term business in the sense that we cannot pass the cost of this specific unit to other things that are not taking advantage of this pretreatment. So what would be the cost to have this thing chuck around for 2 years and then move on?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could, I mean, we haven't looked at it exactly in that way, but I think the purpose of the critical upgrades that we're doing right now would be to get us to at least 2032.
Okay.
So I think the big question would be, what do we do with electrical? There's some critical needs there, but if you're saying if it's a 2-year thing, we probably wouldn't invest in. There probably wouldn't be more investment other than what's already been planned. If we wouldn't spend, we would just try to keep it running and hope for the best and hope there's not some catastrophic failure.
Yeah, I mean, how much we have in the budget for 2026 for pretreatment plant?
I think you had 6.5 there.
3.4.
$3.4 million.
Oh, okay, 3.4.
No, I'm just looking, we spent 5 million, we're gonna spend another 3.5 million. If the decision is in 2 years, we're gonna shut down, does it make sense to have the 3.5 million in the budget or not? Because we don't have the buying from anyone that they're gonna pay. They're gonna stay there, they have commitment, sort of a take and pay. That's my concern.
Yeah, it's legitimate. If we go to these meetings with all the industries and everyone one after another says we're out, we'll have to revisit what we're gonna spend the next year. I mean, I think, and then we also have to, we'd also have to identify what is the timeline by which everyone will be out of the pretreatment plant. So if it is truly 2 years, then that tells us, okay, this is what we need to focus on. We came up with the plan of spending the 3 million for next year on the basis of we need something to get us through 2032. If we only need to get through, say, for example, 2027 or 2028, that's a different story, and we probably could, you know, reduce those costs.
Yeah, I thought way back when, one of the original plan elements was to look at a potential hauled waste only facility, because I still think that's very important to the county and to the region. It's a revenue maker. It could certainly be self-sustaining. And then the other part of that is with the wet weather storage tank. And I assume if there's no flow going to the plant and it's abandoned, that tank was put in for a reason. There would be consequences and costs for overflows and interceptor improvements and all of that, right?
Yeah.
So I guess maybe there are some ancillary costs for the pretreatment plant that are tied to other users other than the industries.
That's fine. I mean, we just have to separate the cost, right? Portion of the cost.
Yeah.
We just cannot afford with the user, the major user, do not pay their share. And we take that cost and allocate it to the other people that are not supposed to get it.
Right.
So far, we have done with that 5 million and whatever is in the budget, right? A portion of it at least. I think that has to be clear. Otherwise, you know, we have in the last 6, 7 years I've been here, we always had said, we have a firewall between pretreatment and rest of the things. We don't borrow, we don't this, but now we started moving things around. I just want to make sure that, you don't go and build a plan, just from my background in the chemical industry, before you have enough volume and commitment, and people are signing the paper, I'm going to pay for it, take and pay. And I don't want to be spending the money and then I don't have the volume and the commitment from the customers. And that's my point.
I would say that we're 100% in agreement on that as well, so. And that's part of the reason that Ed talked about his strategy of not wanting to borrow without revenue streams really nailed down. That's an important piece. So whether we need to phase in some of these near-term improvements to keep the facility in compliance for a period of time. That's one question, but the long-term improvement needs, we're not going to pull the trigger on those until we have the industries on board.
I mean, I appreciate you guys, tremendous job you guys done. Now, at least we have a concrete number that we can go and sit with the sort of our customer, say, hey, look, this is the cost, this is your cost is going to be, and you got a couple of months to tell us that you are in or out. And I think the reason why I'm saying, because at least from my perspective, I don't feel comfortable till we have that answer, spending $2.5 million in 2026, if they say no, right? So that's the critical things that you gotta, with the numbers that you have, going with the customers and talk about it, so. Any question from the board member? Thank you, Jim. I appreciate for your comment. Thank you, Jim. I'm moving to the wastewater suburban division pre-treatment plant critical upgrade. The yellow pages, digital board packages number 11 to 17.
Well, the timing of this one is just perfect. And Chuck is not here to explain it, so I'm assuming AJ, you
Yeah.
got the ball on this one.
Well, this is, we're requesting from the board approval for an amendment to AECOM's contract to provide additional construction phase services for the clarifier rehab work that's currently underway. We had sort of a part-time proposal from them that they're under contract for, but we've recognized, particularly with the high purity oxygen work, that it really wasn't sufficient to oversee what was going on. So we asked them for this proposal. It basically amounts to about 33 weeks of inspection services, 3 days a week, 4 hours a day. And then also assistance with maintaining operations during construction, working with Jacobs to essentially make sure that the plant maintains operation. We're going to be down a clarifier for a period of time. We've never been in a situation, at least not planned, since the facility started up, in the early 90s. So basically, it's for them the bulk of it is for them to provide additional construction services while the work's being done. The clarifiers, I was waiting for an update. They were supposed to be delivered Friday, but they're due any day now, and so want to be able to provide the proper inspection during that work. So the proposal, the total that we're asking for is $147,900 as an amendment to their existing work. Happy to answer any questions.
Any question for H? Seeking authorization for the pre-treatment plant critical facility upgrade, final clarifier rehab for the amount of $147,900.
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
I'll second, Sean.
thank you. The motion made by Jeff and second by Sean. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passed. Thank you. The next topic on the agenda is sewer operational agreement with Lower McCounty, which is on the blue pages, digital board packages, number 18 to 28.
All right, this one should look familiar to you. Earlier this year, we approved almost an identical agreement with Upper Macungie Township for the operation of 6 pump stations in that township. Lower Macungie Township only has the 1 pump station, and it's not even commissioned yet. I don't believe it's going to be commissioned soon. And so the township has asked if we would enter a similar agreement to operate that station, and it's within our service area, so very convenient for our team. And they've used the language that Kevin worked on with us for the Upper Macungie agreement, so there's really no change in the terms of that agreement. And then there's a breakdown of our costs attached to it, our cost proposal attached to the agreement. So, yeah, the township is planning to consider approval of this agreement at a meeting later this month or early October. I'm not sure the timeline on that. And then we'll have both solicitors give a final review before.
Any question from the board member? We have the resources to,
That's Andrew's group.
you have resources to,
To accomplish this, I believe so.
okay.
And is this their first pump station?
Yes, yes. But yeah, this is being newly constructed for a new development area. It's been in the works for quite some time.
So as a way of background, you know, if you have a gravity source system, you don't need a licensed operator. If you have a pump station or multiple pump stations, you need a licensed operator. So if they could hire one, they could hire a contractor, they could hire LCA. Seems probably most cost efficient.
Yeah, that's right.
Smart way to go to hire LCA. So I think it's a great idea.
And both of these arrangements with both townships have been positive from the standpoint of building the good relationships with those
Right. I
municipalities.
think Upper Macungie might have had someone who was retiring or something who had the license or whatever, so that's why they've. Because it's very, licensed operators are not easy to find these days, believe me. You guys know.
You're very, very aware of that.
Yes, yes.
So we would just ask that the motion to approve this, if there is a motion, include authorization for me to sign the agreement, and also pending final review and any minor suggestions by our solicitor.
So the motion is for the disagreement for Upper Macungie Township with the, pardon me?
Lower Macungie.
Lower Macungie. I live in Upper Macungie, so everything in my head is Upper Macungie. And with the delegation for leasehold to be able to sign this agreement. There's no need for you coming back again here. Can I have the motion and second?
I'll make that motion to authorize that as well as leasehold's execution.
Thank you, Sean.
I'll second it.
Okay,
Peter.
motion made by Sean and second by Peter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, motion passed.
Thank you.
Monthly financial review. We will have it on the later date.
Yes, yeah, really project updates.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's the project updates was the first meeting of the month.
My
Yes,
apologies.
we're a little bit behind. We'll get that out as soon as we get it done, hopefully this week.
Okay. The next item is the monthly system operation, page 29 for 41.
All right, we'll start with the safety report. We did have one injury, and that was when an employee was attempting to replace a belt on a pulley to a motor for the odor control unit. It was tagged out. However, there's still some force with the blower, and it pulled his finger and gave him a pretty decent laceration on his index finger. He went to the emergency room to have that fixed, and he's currently on light duty.
Is part of the JSA job safety analysis for that equipment is to, when you tag out, does it indicate and make sure, or other equipment similar to that? And make sure that there is not enough, there is energy not left on that? Is that something, if it's not, are we taking action to correct the JSA for this equipment for that something like that will not happen again?
Yeah, our safety manager is reviewing a lot of these procedures that we've been talking about, whenever I bring these safety incidents up, to review how certain procedures are done for pieces of equipment, so that, exactly like you said, so that does not happen again.
Yeah, it seems from the last couple safety things, the equipment use and safeties, maybe those things need to be reviewed.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to the next page. Water production is right in line with what we typically see this time of year. You will notice that the Lehigh River was not used at all. The Lehigh River is extremely low right now. So we are actually at the point where we could not flow from the Lehigh River if need be. So we're hoping we get some rain in the very near future to resolve that issue, or some water release from the dam up ahead. Going down to Klein's Island, we received 31.91 million gallons per day, which is once again a tad low for really any time of the year. But we only did receive 1.6 inches of rain in August. Going down a little bit further, there were 2 main breaks in the suburban division and just the one injury accident. If you recall from the July report, we did receive an NOV from the city of Allentown. At that time, the response was not created yet, but we did submit that within the time period that they asked, and that is also included in this report. Flipping over to the last page, there were no boil water advisories, no bypasses, no SSOs, and no plan exceedances. Other than that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any question for Andrew from the board member? Thank you, Andrew. Any staff comment?
No comments, thank you.
Any public comment?
No comment, thank you.
No, thank you, Amir.
Any board member comment? Hearing none, adjourn the meeting. Have a great week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.